Welcome to another episode of Simply Medicare. I'm your host, Debbie Stroup, your Michigan Medicare specialist, and I am over the moon excited today to bring on a guest, a friend of mine that I've known, I don't know, you think a year, but maybe it's been more than that,
Right.
Anna, 2 years. We are in the same nonprofit organization that is a wonderful organization that reaches out and helps a lot of senior citizens across southeastern Michigan. And Anna is going to talk about herself a little bit, introduce yourself, but also tell us about the often mysterious, mystical world of hospice. Did I say that? Hospice? It seems like such a scary word, right? But I really am excited to have you on and talk to us about hospice. And it doesn't have to be that scary,
No.
mystical thing that people don't want to say, because it seems like if people say hospice, it's the end. It's right around the corner. We've got 2 days left. And from my experience dealing with my stepfather who passed away, it wasn't that way at all. It was
No.
actually a really beautiful thing and very welcoming. So anyway, I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. So Anna, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here, and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Debbie. I'm glad to be here. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Canada. I moved over to the States when I was in my last year of high school. And just kind of fell into the hospice realm. My husband and I had a small manufacturing business in Hazel Park, and I was an art teacher. And around 2008, the economy started sinking. The business shut down. Catholic schools where I taught were closing left and right. I needed a job, and I needed a job with medical insurance. So I went to work for Beaumont as an aide, and I found myself working on the oncology hospice floor. And I thought, oh my, this is amazing. Like, these people are embracing it. And I ended up going into home hospice, and from there, the company that I worked for recruited me, and now I'm doing what I have a very strong passion for, and that's educating people on end of life. And I found that our culture here in North America, people look at death and dying as something that can be cured.
You know what? Never thought about that, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I like to say we're born and we die,
Yeah.
and everything in between is living until we take that last breath,
Mm-hmm.
the very last breath.
Mm-hmm.
Our culture almost seems like the medical profession is focused on the disease and not the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had quite a lot of success fixing the disease or curing it or eradicating it. But where does it leave the whole person? That's the thing. You're going to cure a disease, but to what cost?
Right. That's
You-
really interesting. Like, can you cite anything on that? I mean, you
I
think
can,
it's
I can. My niece came to me and she said one day, her grandma, 89, she goes, "Grandma's got cancer, and we really want her to go for chemo and get surgery." And I said, "Okay, why? How is she going to benefit from that?" And she looked at me like I had 12 heads. And
right.
Anna, it's going to benefit her. I said, "How?" I said, "She's 89. Where's it going to take her?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, it'll get rid of the tumor. Maybe it will.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it won't. But at what cost? What is she going to benefit from that in the end? Well,
Mm-hmm.
she'll be with us longer. Okay. At what quality of life? She's
Mhm.
going to go through months of misery, surgery, recovery, where she's not going to be at home. She's going to be in rehab if her whole body can recover from that trauma. And then chemo. That's not a fun thing to go through. You know, people get sick, they get fatigued, they get drained. So how is she going to benefit from that?
Mhm.
So my niece said, well, we really want her to. I said, if you have an open, honest conversation with her and she's on board with that, walk with her to get her through it. If you have an open conversation with her and she's not on board with that, walk her through that.
Because there are choices, right? I mean,
There are always choices.
yeah, and I think you have put a wonderful spin on what the end of life could be like. People are focused on making the cure, getting the cure,
Right.
and the end doesn't necessarily justify the means, because getting
Correct.
there, maybe she lives a month more, but everything that happens between then and the end, is it really what the person wants? And
Right.
if they don't, what are some of their options?
Correct. So, you know, they need to be educated. People need to be educated. They have to know what it means to be cured. Cured means returning to a functioning life, able to partake in your daily activities, or do you want life-sustaining treatment? And that typically focuses on the lungs, the kidneys, the heart. It doesn't focus on mobility. It doesn't focus on alert thinking, and it doesn't focus on independence. The other choice is comfort care. Comfort care, focusing on the quality of your life as opposed to the length of your life. Pain management, symptom management, emotional support for you and your family. That's comfort care. Comfort care is hospice care. So
So,
you have to figure out which one you would like, and you have to ask your doctors. You have to ask them to have open, honest conversations. You know, how will I benefit from this treatment? What will the quality of my life be during this treatment? And after this treatment, what will the quality of my life be without the treatment?
mhm.
You know, people deserve these answers. And
And that's
doctors are afraid to approach a person and tell them they're nearing the end. They hate that conversation. So we got to educate, educate, educate.
And if they hate it, I'm sure that the recipient, their patient, can feel that. And so it's just an avoidance. Let's just avoid the conversation completely. And
Right.
the easy route would be to just do whatever it takes. But is it really the easy route, right? I mean, do
Correct.
you find though that hospice, being an older person versus a midlife or younger, is easier or harder? So for example, that 89-year-old grandma versus maybe a 52-year-old mom, same diagnosis. How do
Right.
you talk to them if they've got the same thing and the outcome could be the same? How do you talk to them, an 89 versus a 52-year-old mom who's got a 10-year-old at home?
So the 52-year-old mom, actually, we had a lady on our service for 3 years.
Mm.
She was in her late 40s. She had two children. And when I first spoke to her, she was in the hospital and she said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm done. I said, what do you want to do? What is it you want to do? She said, I want to be home with my family. Well, then
Mm.
let's make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it happen. And I asked her, what are your expectations? Do you know where this is going? She said, I have 5 years max. I want to be home. I don't want to be in the hospital. I don't want to go back and forth. So that's what we did. We brought her home.
And she accepted it, correct? Saying,
Right,
what about, we're all going to die, whether we accept it or not. Some people might just know when they're going to die, and some people might not know when they're going to die. Perhaps you
correct,
and I right now don't know when we're going to die, but if
right.
we have a terminal illness diagnosis, we might know when we're going to die.
Well, you're going to remind it every day that it's imminent.
Right, right. So, how do you make that 52, 48-year-old's life better when they know that they've got 5 years to live or 2 years to live? How do you make that better for them?
So the hospice team is specifically trained at end of life. Their specialty is comfort care as opposed to curing.
Mhm.
So they are specifically trained for pain management, for symptom management. There are social workers and chaplains that can come in and help with emotional support for the patient and the family. They work with the children, the 52-year-old lady in her late 40s. They'll come there, they'll work with the children. Um, we go to them. They're not running back and forth to the hospital. Oh, I couldn't spend time watching that movie with little Sarah because I couldn't take the pain and I had to go to the emergency room. No, no. You
Right,
call us. We're going to
right,
come to you. You
right,
know, we're going to get this under control.
right, right. So it's just really thinking about the quality of your life. And sometimes our family and friends around us make that decision for us. How do you work through that?
By being open and honest. Where do you see your sister at Christmas time? How do you see her at Christmas?
Mhm.
Do you see her laying in a hospital bed with IV for pain and, as people say, loopy out of it?
Right.
Or do you see her sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket with the kids playing on the floor?
Hmm.
Where do you see this going?
Right. And if the outcome is going to be similar, then you may want to consider an alternative. So
Correct.
and I think people, when they talk about hospice, they think hospice is the last chapter. I mean, absolutely. When anybody says the word hospice, they're going to die within a week or so.
I know.
You know, that wasn't the case with me and my family.
Right.
Um, they I had talked to them about it, and I said, at least just talk, just talk.
Mhm.
And they were really glad they did, because it gave them help and support. So can you talk a little bit about what's the difference between, oh, Aunt Betty's going to die in 2 days, let's call hospice, versus Aunt Betty is in liver failure and we're not really sure what's going on, and let's call hospice now. Maybe she's got 6 months to a year to live. So can you talk us
Right.
through that?
So you're calling 2 days before everything's already out of control.
Yeah.
The pain is over the top, the emotions are over the top, family is scrambling, the patient is at their wit's end.
Ugh.
You call in hospice and they're trying to get a feel of the landscape, they're trying to understand the family dynamics, they're trying to bring that pain level down that has already sh- shot through the ceiling to a manageable level so that they can keep the person comfortable. It's 2 days of scrambling,
Sounds like chaos to me too,
extremely chaotic.
and
And
stressful, and all the other words, adjectives that you can think of
yes,
describing. And
exactly.
it's the
And,
last
and
ditch effort.
family and patients are getting frustrated. These people are coming in, they're not doing what they said they would do. You know, she's still screaming and crying, and we don't know how to handle this. Whereas you come in 6 months prior, family gets to know their team, the team gets to know the family, and they prepare them for what is coming. You know, dying isn't painful. It's the disease that's painful. So they educate them on what's coming with the disease that or illness that they have, and everybody is on board and prepared. They know when to call their team in. You know, the team knows when to increase visits. It just makes for a much smoother end of life.
And the way that when I was trying to educate my family on it is, you know what, we're not really qualified to make a hospice decision. Why don't we just call in and let them give us an honest and unbiased determination? And they may say, you know what, maybe 6 months here and then we'll come in. If they came in and said, yeah, we think that this person's going to live a long time, then great. But I always say, we're not really qualified to make that decision. Let's bring in a professional. Let them tell us what they think is the best.
And what I do when I go to talk to people, Debbie, I sit down and I listen to their story, you know, what brought them to calling me in. And then when they say, what do you think I should do? I can't tell them or even suggest to them what they should do. I tell them we need to obtain your medical records. The medical records tell the medical story, and our director of nursing and medical director will go through these records, and from there they'll make the determination if you meet hospice criteria or not.
So how do people pay for hospice? I mean, all of these wonderful services sound really expensive.
I know, and so many people come to me, we can't afford that.
We can't afford that, right?
It's out of our budget. Nope. Well, actually, if you have Medicare, it is covered 100% under the Medicare benefit. Most insurances pay for hospice. If you have limited income, you don't have insurance, many hospices will do charity work, you know, and or they will lead you to where you can get the assistance to get coverage for hospice. The social workers at the hospitals or even on the hospice team can help you get to a place where you can receive that benefit. And it covers so much, you know, not just do you have access to the hospice team, a doctor, a nurse, a home health aide, a social worker, a chaplain. And when I say chaplain, people get a little, I'm not religious. It's not about that. They focus more on your spiritual being, you know.
Correct.
And it covers all your supplies. If you're incontinent, all your incontinence supplies, wound supplies, hygiene supplies. It covers mobility equipment like wheelchairs and walkers, shower chairs, a Hoyer lift if you can't get out of bed and you need a lift to get out of bed. Any medication that is relates to the terminal diagnosis. Physical therapy. If you're benefiting from therapy to help you live your best life until you take your last breath, physical therapy is covered. There's so much, and it's all free under the Medicare benefit and most insurances. And like I say, if you are with a limited income, there is assistance out there.
How can people, like, what would be a suggestion for those of us that are listening and we think hospice is just for the last couple of days, or when I call hospice, I've given up? or I've given up on my family. I have no other choice. I'm giving up. It's a very bad word. And what would you say to folks that are listening that to get them over that hump to call, at least just to call? What would you say?
What I say to people, and I hear that all the time, she's just given up. Well, she's not giving up. She's not giving up hope. She is redefining her hope. Maybe a month ago, her hope was there was going to be a cure.
Yeah.
So now she's redefined that. And her hope is to spend this time with people that she loves in a comfortable setting, wherever her home may be, just being comfortable. So she's not giving up. She's just redefining her goals.
Right. And I think we've got 6 months to live, or 7 months to live, or a month to live, or 2 weeks to live, wouldn't you want it to be in a more peaceful environment where your family can remember it better than extending it maybe a month or two, or even a year, but you were in the hospital the whole time?
Right.
So
Where people are, no.
I just think that it needs to become more friendly word, if you will. And that it doesn't have to be something that we're scared of, because we're all going to experience it. And how do we want to experience it?
Right.
Do we want to experience it, thin and frail, and we've lost our hair and we're in the hospital, or we have our dignity and we're at home and we're wrapped up in the blanket, and our grandchildren are putting a puzzle, or our children are putting a puzzle together on the floor.
That's my dream. And everybody sees it differently. I remember my sister asking my dad, "Why don't you want to live?" And he said, "I am living.
I am living.
This is living."
Right. Right.
I'm not going to be, he didn't want all he called them heroics. I don't want the tubes. I don't want the surgeries.
Yep.
This is living, and my life is laid out,
So what do you do if patient has made the decision, I don't want any more treatment, but spouse, friend, family member they're mad. They're mad. They've called you. They don't want to call you. They don't want to accept this. How do you walk them through that they've given up? They don't want to live anymore, and I'm mad at them about that. How do you handle that?
Funny you should say. I went to school, graduated from high school with my very best friend, stood up in her wedding, godmother to her firstborn, and her husband had cancer, and it was horrible. And I would go over every week and visit. And I walked in one day and she was sitting in the kitchen and she was crying and she was angry. I said, "What is wrong?" She said, "I can't do this anymore." "What?" "Taking him back and forth to the hospital, fighting with the wheelchair. She goes, I'm sick of it. I just can't do it." And this is reality. People get to that point.
Yeah.
So I went in and I looked at him and he looked horrible. He was gray and exhausted. And I'm like, "What is going on here?" I said, what's happening?" He said, "I can't do this anymore." He said, "I'm exhausted." I said, "Well, why are you?" He said, "For her." And I went back in the kitchen. I said, "Why are you doing it?" "For him."
For him.
I'm like, "You two need to talk." So I brought them both in the living room and they decided to bring somebody in for a hospice consult. He went on to hospice and I stopped by maybe 2 weeks after that. And he said, "I am so happy that you came by." He said, "Look at me." He said, "I can sit up and I can eat 2 donuts now, where before I couldn't even have a bite." And she was happy. She was puttering in the garden. There was no more of that.
Yep.
They were living.
Right. right.
And
That
and
makes
he was
sense.
on hospice for a little over 2 years.
Yeah,
They
and it
had,
doesn't have
yeah,
to be, I mean, you can explain that, but in my ignorance a while ago, I thought hospice was just for the last couple of weeks of life, but it doesn't have to be, right?
no, no. And oftentimes, Debbie, with the added level of care and the refiguration of their their medication regiment, people get better and they
Mhm.
graduate from hospice. And sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't.
What do you mean
Yeah.
by graduation? Like, or
So
graduate?
graduation, they no longer meet hospice criteria. Their health has improved.
Hmm.
They've had that level of care to get them through the hump. They've had their medications adjusted for what their body is going through at that time,
Mhm.
and they improve. So they move off of hospice.
Hmm. That's what a really exciting thing. I mean, that, it can happen. I'm sure
It
it's not
can and
the
it
norm.
does.
It's probably not the norm, but it can
No,
happen.
no, right.
And I just think that we as humans need to look at death and dying differently than what we do, because it's going to
Yeah,
happen.
it
And
is.
how do we want our days to be remembered? And
Right.
I think that hospice offers us a really awesome choice in
Mm-hmm.
and how we can do that. And maybe it's not our choice, but if it's the
Right.
patient's choice, out of love and respect and care, we need to do what they want.
We need to honor that,
Mhm.
and walk beside them, whatever their choice is,
Right.
you
And
know,
but
and yeah,
and, and when they die, it's going to be painful, no matter if the last days were hooked up to IVs or the last days were helping garden in the garden, gardening in
right.
the garden.
Mm-hmm.
When they pass, it's going to be painful.
There's
We're
a void.
we're
Yes.
going to cry, and I bet you've got, grievance support groups afterwards, but we're going to feel that void no matter what. So
Yes.
perhaps we can have the before be more peaceful and have
Yep.
it be remembered wonderfully.
Build those wonderful memories while you are still living.
Yeah, I think so. And I wanted to ask you one last question here, which might lead into another one. But what is there for the family and the friends, coworkers after they pass? What does hospice do for us that are left? We have that void now. They're gone.
That's a great question. Hospice offers grief support for 13 months after a person passes. And a lot of times people say, no, I don't need that. But
Mm-mm.
really, truly, they do need that. They have bottled up feelings. They have an emptiness that's new to them. And I say to everybody, please, please take advantage of it. You may not need it for the full 13 months, but
Mhm.
it's there. It's there for you.
Mm.
Take advantage of that support. These people are trained to help you walk through
And
that difficult time.
is
That
that at
is
no
no cost.
cost?
That is no cost. It's all part of the hospice benefit.
And what if they live in a remote area? What if there isn't a group nearby? Can we do it over the phone, or is there Zoom? How does that work?
There is whatever works for them. Sometimes people want one-on-one, a one-on-one counseling sessions. Sometimes people want the groups where they can go, and they have in-person groups. And now, COVID gifted us with these
Yes,
virtual. This is
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah,
You
I know.
know, once again, we come to you in the comfort of your home.
Right? Yep.
Yes. So, yeah, it's there. Take advantage of it. You may not think you need it. I
Yeah.
was one of those people after my husband passed.
Mm.
I came from the generation of suck it up, buttercup, pull up your
Right.
bootstraps and move on.
Yeah.
That was a trudge through the mud that I don't
Right.
care to repeat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I understand that. So, one last thing that I think we talked about, but I think it's really, really super important is the medications. So a lot of these medications are really expensive, and
yeah,
perhaps their Medicare doesn't cover it, or their prescription plan doesn't cover it, but hospice does. And
right.
another reason of a laundry list of reasons
Yeah,
why to call hospice. And
yeah,
you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to wait till the last minute. Let them make the determination and walk through that
exactly.
together. But you do, right? You cover the
Right.
medications.
We cover all the medications relating to that terminal diagnosis, and we do not come in and wipe everything else off the table.
Oh, yeah. So are you thinking that that's a fear too, that they're,
That's a huge fear. People say all the time, you're going to come in, you're going to say, I can't take that, I can't take this. No, I don't want to. What we do is we come in and we educate you. All these vitamins, your body at this point in time isn't really metabolizing them. So
mm,
you're just taking in empty calories, so to speak. But if you want them, certainly you
take
can
them,
have them.
take them.
Um, Blood pressure medication is another one that people worry about. But oftentimes with the team there and the medications relating to the diagnosis, the blood pressure is controlled. And if it's not,
Hmm.
absolutely you're going to take your blood pressure medicine because we want you to be comfortable.
Right, right. That,
Not taking it might shoot it through the ceiling. You're going to have headaches. You're going to have worries about a stroke. That's not what we want,
right.
you know.
So a fear is that you're going to come in and just take full control and tell me what I can and can't take anymore, but
Correct.
that doesn't sound realistic.
It's not. Even we've had patients that they are on dialysis for kidney failure, but their terminal diagnosis is heart failure. They
Hmm.
don't want to stop that dialysis. So we sit down, we educate them. This could happen, most likely will, that you go into cardiac arrest while receiving the dialysis.
Hmm.
But if you are finding comfort
Right.
and you feel that you're benefiting from it, by all means, continue until you decide you no longer need this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think you've helped us understand that hospice is not this big, scary Bigfoot that lives in the woods.
Nope.
It's something we're going to pass away anyway.
Yep.
And if you want to do it on your terms, then hospice might be a really great choice. But I always try and tell people, let them help you make the decision. Don't you
Correct.
make the decision on your own, because
No,
really they're not educated on it. And it's not their
no,
fault.
no, it
But
isn't their fault. It isn't their fault. People often don't want the knowledge or the information until they need it. I say know us before you need us.
yeah, absolutely.
Have it in your back pocket.
Right, right. I mean, you don't have to like put it on your refrigerator, but
No,
meet Anna, see what Anna's like. I mean, who doesn't love Anna, right? She's
thank you.
great, right? And so it's going to happen. So let's just be a little bit more prepared. Let's not be afraid of the big scary Bigfoot that lives in the woods. It's
No,
there. Well, I don't know if Bigfoot's there or not, but it's, death is
right.
there. So
Yes.
let's figure it out. Let's work it out and see, what's the best way. So
Be prepared. Be
I
prepared.
be prepared. And you have such a kind and gentle soul. Anybody that spends time with you will be able to feel that. So I would
Oh, thank you,
encourage
Debbie.
people that, if even if you're not, if hospice isn't, death and dying isn't on your doorstep, just look us up. Look up Anna, look at
That's
the
right.
website. call Anna, talk to her, and just, you'll realize that it's not a big scary thing. And
Yeah,
just get to know somebody in hospice so that when you do, it's not crisis mode, like you said.
correct.
So how do we go about getting a hold of you, Anna?
So you go about getting hold of me. You can call my personal number, 313-334-8267, or you can call our office of Choice Hospice, 313-551-4626, and they'll switch the phones over to me. That's the easiest way.
Is there a website? Because I know we've got a lot of these
Yes,
boomers and
there is a website.
we'll get that. We'll put it, how
We'll
about
get that.
we'll put that up on the screen. So there's
Okay,
lots
yeah,
of different ways to get a hold of you.
there are lots of different ways,
Yeah,
yes.
and I know the baby boomers that are aging in, perhaps, they're seeing their folks getting
Mhm.
close to the end. It's a great thing to have in your back pocket. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me, Debbie. Knowledge is power. We can't get enough of it. Thank you so much.
It is truly my pleasure. And that's another episode of Simply Medicare. I'm your host, Debbie Stroup, your Michigan Medicare specialist. Looking forward to our next guest and talking with all of you soon.
If you've enjoyed this edition of Simply Medicare podcast and you don't want to miss any future episodes, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Please also leave comments and offer feedback so we can make this podcast the best it can be for you. If you need assistance with your Medicare sign-up or you just have general Medicare questions, make sure to reach out to me at 248-227-0347. You can also reach me online at michiganmedicarespecialist.com or through my email at debbie@michiganmedicarespecialist.com. I really look forward to working with you soon.